Well, hello, folks. I am Kevin LaRue from SlickPic. I'm coming at you from San Diego, California. I'm joined by my colleague Sam Berzin, and Sam is also on the West Coast, but we're here with the delightful and talented Deb Sandidge. She lives in Florida, so we're bi-coastal today. Hi, Deb.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Certainly. Thanks for agreeing to be on this journey with us and share some of your insights. Hey, guys. Once a month, we try to bring in a renowned pro and have them review submissions in our 2024 52-week photo challenge. If you guys have been following along, we give out assignments every week. You can draw from your past catalog that matches the assignment category, or you can go out and shoot new shots, but we want to kind of complete that circle by bringing somebody in with more knowledge than samurai to to kind of take a look and give a general critique and review of the shots that have been submitted. If you folks aren't familiar with Deb's work, she is a world-renowned professional photographer. She's a Nikon ambassador. In fact, she just got back from doing some new camera launch work for Nikon's newest cameras, and maybe you can say a few words about that as you start. So without further ado, I mean, Deb, you can share a few more notes about yourself, but otherwise, let's get cracking here. Thank
Well,
you.
again, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it. It's great to see you all. I've enjoyed going over your work, reviewing it. So fantastic. Because I don't just do birds and wildlife. I love pretty much everything. I saw some infrared. I saw some really cool landscapes, a lot of water work. So this is all near and dear to my heart. So it was a lot of fun to see this. And it was a nice break from going back and forth to New York and the new camera stuff. I know a lot of people are interested in the latest and greatest. So it's kind of fun to work on that and then come back to this. So yeah, let's get started. Let's dig into, we're working with, I think the first one is film Noir. And we can start
Yeah,
by just sharing my screen.
yeah, that sounds great. And you were working with the new, what's the new Nikon camera model you were working with?
It is the Nikon Z6 III, which was such a fantastic step into this system here. So I have
Wow.
an older camera, the Nikon Z6 II. So it's really nice. It's not quite as pricey, price point is a little bit more reasonable, but you have a lot of functions of the high-end cameras. So I think it's going to be
Mm,
a lot of interest. So is everybody seeing
excellent.
the screen okay?
Yeah, I've got it. I've got it up here in the film noir category. So yeah.
Super, super. So we have a lot of really interesting images. Scroll down here and give you a feel for what we'll be talking about. Really a lot of interest. And one of the things I like about black and white, it's just so interesting because you take away some of that reality and it becomes a little bit different. You see the textures and the contrasts, and those are the things that really stand out about things that are in black and white, essentially. So let's start right with this first one. This was really interesting. It's super high contrast. It appears to be like a mask. And so really having the photographer just hone in on that particular subject. So, and make it have a lot of drama. So you see the textures, the contrast, very high, black and white. It looks like this originally was a wood piece, perhaps first from some environment. So when we travel, it's so interesting to come back with photographic keepsakes. And I feel like this really falls into that category. So it's an interesting work here. The textures were nicely brought out. And let's see here. We'll go back. We have a couple other shots. This is really beautiful. So this is Daydreamer, and appropriately and aptly named. So you have here the figure in the foreground and you have the background, which is really, really interesting. So I like the clouds and just the last moments of the sun. And of course, this sort of is a contemplative type of a shot. So you've got the nice contrast and also the silhouette. I think silhouettes are one of the most interesting things to work with because there's a lot of mystery. You don't quite see all the detail of the subject, so there's a little bit of mystery about the particular subject. For this particular shot, I would like to see a little bit more on this right side, just brought out. It just feels a little bit darker on that side. That's super easy to do. We have all the tools pretty much, in Photoshop or whatever application that you're working with. So you could actually use like a linear gradient and slide that over and open up that area. So it's really simplistic, some of the features that we have now, but then that would give a little bit more detail and not have it so dark. But I really like, this is a really good start here. Oh goodness, they're all so beautiful. I would try to do every single one. This is really interesting. So you have a foreground element of the person and this tall, kind of Gothic looking architecture. It's very dramatic, very slight toning here, sort of leans into the sepia kind of a world. I like the contrast. You've got a small figure and dramatic architecture. That's really beautiful stuff. When you start working with that type of play off of the size proportions, that's really quite beautiful. The light is interesting, but you've got just the central part of that. But yeah, you can, if you explore the composition, you can really see into this and you can see the figure. So I like that idea. I think that's a really great idea to explore when you travel. Again, come away with some really interesting figures. Very nice treatment. The figure is just illuminated enough to be of interest, but not play a central portion. So they're in the shot, it just becomes part of the shot, sort of like a mysterious type of an event.
Yeah, I was going to say that there's that one immediately created a storytelling element to me. I'm like, why is the person there? Who are they related to the building? Hey, Deb, I had a question for you.
Sure.
Yeah, can you define film noir in your own words? Just what does that mean to you? Because when I think of it, I think of the old sort of black and white Hollywood, the detective stuff. But clearly there's a lot of room for interpretation in the category. What do you think film noir is?
Oh, that's a really well, immediately I just assumed that for the category purposes, it was a black and white. But when you say film noir, it has a little bit more drama and it's a bit more exciting. I personally think of Versailles. I don't know if you remember 1930s Paris at night. Versailles is amazing and it really fits this entire category. So he did a whole thing where he actually visited Paris and then came back and shot it in a short time. And he actually timed his. If you read this book, he times his exposures by one cigarette. So he knew how long actually how to expose. So it was so fascinating. So I think that's sort of with the film noir, it's drama, it's interesting. So
cool, good.
Yeah, that's where I come from for that. But yeah, Versailles was such an influence on me for as far as black and white is so absolutely tremendous. So here we go. I like this shot. I spent some time looking at this earlier. This is really interesting to me. I was trying to define if this was a evening shot or actually a day shot that was toned to look at that. It has a lot of illumination. So yeah, so it's I like the little house, so a building, and of course it's just this, it's old, it's age, it's curious, like what purpose did this serve? What is this? And a lot of beautiful landscape behind this is really, really interesting as far as the textures. So it could be that it was a night shot, but I can't see any stars. Or it could have been an afternoon. So this is fine. This is totally up to the photographer on how they want to present their work. I would say be super careful of dust spots. There is a small dust spot on the horizon, and sometimes you might need to expand the photos to be able to see that. If you're working in Adobe Camera Raw, you can go to visualize spots, and in this will tell you where you have those. It's not always apparent, and it's really easy to miss. I know I've done that before and looked back and thought, oh my goodness. But this is really this is beautiful landscapes, a lot of texture. Some of the darker areas, I might even take some of those and just open up the shadows slightly, but that, again, that's just a personal choice. Oh, this is absolutely stunning. I really enjoyed seeing this photo. It's been a while since I've traveled. So I was in, I think the last was different, or Russia or India, but this is beautiful. I thought the profile of the figure was absolutely stunning. That she has a translucent veil, and you can see that her beauty underneath with these amazing earrings, and she's got a lot of jewelry. But then it's this modest drape of the fabric, with the translucency of the fabric, makes this image very mysterious and very beautiful. She's a very elegant woman. Her profile is stunning. I would have been drawn to this also, and I think, is it interesting, again, when you take this and you either convert it to black and white, or if you're shooting in monochrome mode, again, it takes away the time frame. It brings you to more of a timeless setting. And this woman is absolutely exquisite, and they photographed her very nicely. There isn't really much to add or take away. I mean, you could leave a little more on the top, and if you wanted to, but this is just how you compose it is personal choice. I think as a black and white image, it's good. You have darks, you have lights, but nothing is overblown or too dark. So I think as far as a black and white example or film noir, this is very expressive, very dramatic. And let's see here. We'll go, Casablanca. This is a beautiful shot. I like portraits. I don't do a lot of portraits. I do a few, and it's always interesting to me to see them, because everybody has a different take and approach, and a different feeling on this. And I always respect people who can and really hone in on that expression and make that person's personality really shine. So here he's got what appears to be a toothpick in his mouth. So he's a little irreverent, and he's got the coat pulled over his neck and hat tipped down. So it's really beautiful. It's dark and a little bit moody. So I feel like the photographer did a good job. I mean, you've got this area in his face that would be very easy to lose the highlights, but the photographer was very careful and made sure that stayed in balance. The darkness does, you could open this up a little bit on the coat, but, I'm not going to pick on that. I think that, again, it's very moody and dramatic. So I do like the pose. There's a thing about having shooting so there is dynamic flow in an image, and you think about this person, you've got that dynamic flow. It runs from the bottom left to the top, so it just works within the image. And having him look off to the side, it just adds that nice touch. He's not really looking at you because he doesn't care. He's looking off at something else because he has this aloofness about them, and the photographer really captured that well. So kudos, really beautiful shot.
Yeah, he looks very roguish to me.
Rogue, yeah, he's just real dramatic. This is really beautiful too. It's the same kind of idea and context. You have this beautiful woman. She is not looking at the photographer. She's looking somewhere else. And again, that adds to the aloofness, and it's as if she didn't know the photograph was being taken. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. I think that so many, when I did a lot of lifestyle and stock, people are always looking at you, and they were very posed, and you had this kind of a different feel. It was so totally not like this. This is more, portrait, but kind of street candid. I really like that. The hat really speaks ages ago. It's not necessarily a contemporary style hat, and the dark sweater is beautiful. It looks to be exposed really well. You could, if it were me personally, I would just touch up the little dusty spots on the jacket, just remove that, and maybe lighten in a little bit on that chest area where her hair is. You could experiment with maybe bringing that down a little bit. So she's really, really high at the top of that frame, and she's so beautiful. We want to experience everything about her. She's gorgeous, and we want to see all her characteristics and her expression. So that's just a couple of thoughts on that. But it's a beautiful shot. You did well, and it's really interesting to look at.
Hey, Deb,
Yeah.
and you can you comment on the upper right corner? Do you?
I would, yeah, now that is an area of interest. I would tone that down personally, and that's so easy to do. Again, you could make a selection in Adobe Camera Raw, just use a brush and just brush that little area. It will contain any type of value change and exposure
Oh,
isolated to that top. And that is important to talk about. Yeah, usually what happens is the brightest part of the frame is going to draw the viewer's eye to that point. And again, that's why setting this figure down a little bit lower and then balancing that portion of the light is a simple fix. And it's an expressive photograph, so it's worth going that direction.
yeah, it's gorgeous.
Oh, this is fun. So I love trains. I think they're so interesting. So this looks to be really kind of vintage cool. So they probably have this and perhaps the steam, and this is what we're experiencing, all this steam, I think from the train itself, which is so dramatic. And I love presenting this in black and white because it looks so established in time. It has a sense of place and time, and I love that. I think it's really beautiful. A lot of different action. Have this rolling steam, so you feel the action of this train, and you feel it. And then the conductor, whomever is standing outside, just really kind of enjoying the view. But I like that. There's a mystery about this obscured part of this, and you have a lot of the textures, and the contrast looks very nice. The definition in the clouds is very good on that top side. Personally, I like the vanishing point of the train on the right. So you could have that or not. I mean, that just dependent on the steam, but I liked, again, it's like coming out of a dream kind of a feeling with this. So you have this really great subject for film noir. I think it's beautifully done. So let's see, this is fabulous. Yeah, I think this got a lot of attention in the comments when I was looking at this. A lot of people felt that same impact. It has a lot of visual impact, and that's really what you want to do when you're trying to create something. It's not a person that's pulling you in. It is just the drama of the architecture, and I love that. I mean, if I was traveling, this is kind of shot I would like to make. So it is symmetrical in that it's perfectly centered with the building behind it, yet you have these dramatic shadows, very intense shadows that are coming off from a light source on that side. Nice. The columns are beautiful. You can see a lot of definition in that, and then the pavers. I mean, you don't need a person in this shot. This is straight, beauty impact of the architecture. I used to do a lot of, I don't even talk about HDR anymore, but high dynamic range. So if you had the opportunity to maybe tone down the brightness of the lights, because there could be slightly more definition in that. Again, the brightest part attracts our eyes, and it is pretty bright. You could actually, you could process it if you had several images, or go back and maybe just tone the brightness down. So so it's not so quite blown out in those two areas. But again, that's just a very small comment on a very dramatic photo that is well done. I think that's finding the quality of light, the angle of light, the beauty of light. That's our goals as a photographer. We really want to work towards finding something like this. And again, this is where scouting comes in. So you go to an area, you scout it out, you look what the possibilities are, and you revisit it at the time where you might be more successful or best successful with your camera. And obviously, this is what the photographer did. Great work.
Not only that, timing the moonlight, if that was moon.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. Beautiful. This was a fun shot. So this is really, really interesting. So it would almost fall in the symmetrical type of category. And it's so cool. It almost has a feeling as if it was shot with a fisheye. I don't know, or maybe that's just a round building. Again, you kind of question, wow, how was this shot? It's very, very interesting. I like the drama of it. We've got a lot of architectural detail, with the figurines and this. So again, sort of a candid shot. You've got people, walking into this building, but I like the contrast pretty good control of the range of blacks to white. So when you're converting an image to black and white or working with an image, it's nice to have something that's really white, really dark, and a lot of in between. I would go ahead and remove this little guy right here. That's easy to do and visualize spots, just a few little areas. It's always going to show up in the sky. It's always when the picture is big, is when you start to see little things like this that you didn't know, it happens to all of us. So, but that's really, it's interesting. It looks like a round building and a round square, and it's a fun shot for this. So I think the photographer did a very good job. So we have, let's see, we're getting close to, let's take a peek at this. Galapagos. Wow. It's been a while since I've been to the Galapagos Islands. Yeah, I swear I saw the first shark underneath me in the water. So I feel this. But no, this is really cool. Get out of the water. But this is beautiful. Really fun place. Interesting. It's really harder to pull off, sort of a beachy scene in this, because a lot of the beaches sort of lean into the color aspect. But this is done well for that. We got some people on the beach and different things. So it was just, a moment in time. It's interesting to me how black and white can really lean into the documentary type of an image, or it can, it just has so many different ways it can work with a particular shot. So this looks pretty good. I mean, as far as technically, I think that the darks, the areas that are black, especially on the right side, are very, very dark. So again, maybe try to open up the shadows slightly. It's just so easy to do. When I take a picture into Photoshop or an application where I'm looking at it, I try to look at what works, what doesn't work, and what can be improved. And those are the three technical things. So I look at it critically. Of course, when I pick them to work with, I'm looking at more emotional content, that kind of thing, how the bang is exciting or whatever. But when I look at it technically, then I'm looking again, a little bit more critically. So look again, okay, just try to observe the image and see if there's areas of improvement. And then I work from there. So you start with some of these areas that are a little dark, want to bring them up, maybe tone down some of the brightness in particular areas. And that'll guide you in your post-processing.
Do you use dodge and burn brushes much, Deb?
No, you can do that, but I feel like dodge and burn lived maybe, I mean, they still live in Photoshop, but I think most of the post-processing really happens in Adobe Camera Raw, because for me, there is so much control. So when I open an image, the first thing I do in Adobe Camera Raw, it has a very nice application that will address any type of noise. And see, that's the first thing I like to address. So we start there. And then I look at, okay, wow, I need to tone down the brightness of a particular area. So for me, I might add a radial gradient, and you can control the volume and extension of this, and also the intensity of the change. So to me, all the changes that I can do in Adobe Camera Raw, and you could certainly do dodging and burning, but I think the controls that are available to us in Camera Raw are so advanced, and it doesn't take too long. I don't want to be afraid of jumping into something that sounds really technical, but if I can do it, you can do it, I promise.
That's cool. That's cool.
So we have a figure of a gentleman, and he looks like sort of, could be anywhere. It's not particularly Western, but he's got the really great beard. So technically, there's a couple of things I'd love to address. So I think that part of his beard, if you look just right here, the detail has been lost. And again, that might have been working with a smaller image or that kind of thing. I don't recall exactly. But I would kind of maybe revisit this and tone down some of the brighter areas that exist in the beard. And then some of the darker areas here bring that shadow up, especially right around here in his eye. There's not entirely a lot of definition, but I think he has a really cool expression. I understand why the photographer was interested in that particular shot, but candid shots are always fun. I mean, I think that so when you travel, you sometimes they're just shooting. Sometimes I try to ask, especially in foreign countries where you're not allowed to generally shoot people. But if you have somebody who will pose for you, I think that's a beautiful thing. You can get some really interesting shots. Here. So this is interesting. So this looks like it must have been a statue for some, and I love. I think it's always interesting to come back with that kind of thing. It's really it reminds you of. I think it was in Slovenia, and they have a lot of dragon statues. And so I always try to do the same thing, get underneath and photograph so the sky is clear, or if you have some clouds, and photograph this interesting shape. There's a lot of texture and detail in this. So you've got the, I don't know, is he Poseidon or something? It was really interesting. It's got, if you really look into this shot, there's so many things. It's got shells that are up in the head area. It's got little fish that are joining him, and a fabulous sea turtle. So yeah, I would have taken this picture also. But the technically, it looks like it's well done. There isn't too much. I mean, if you wanted to try to open up the shadow slightly here, which is simply the turtle casting a shadow, you could do that. I think, it's really hard for me to judge on noise reduction because I know a lot of the pictures were small and they're blown up big. So, so I would say on your own screens when you're at home, look at your shots, blow them up to 100% and greater, and just see if you have noise. And if you do, there are so many noise applications. If you don't do this first in Adobe Camera Raw, there are other applications. There's like Topaz and things that are just your own native application. But do check that first. Not that this one it's hard to tell from a small image.
Yeah, I liked the separation between the statue and the background there quite a bit. I thought they did a good job of whether it was masking the statue and then working specifically on that. But I really like the way things were separated there. It's almost like the background has a little bit of a bluish tone on my screen. I don't know if that's the same on yours, but really cool
actually see, it's almost like on this one, it's almost like a sepia in the corners, but it's more blue gray here.
Yeah. Interesting. Good
yeah,
stuff.
It works.
Good stuff. So that's film noir for us. That's an awesome rundown.
Okay, wow. So we're going to move to what would be the next one?
You can do urban decay or you can do water photography. You're doing work weeks 23 through 26.
Okay, I think we have urban decay. So that would...
Oh, yes.
Okay, that pops us up in the right place. So, oh my goodness, we have, there's so many interesting photos here. And I like urban decay. So there was a period in time where I did this. I mean, we kind of would, I don't want to say we crawled in windows, but we did a lot of shooting. And it's interesting, urban decay. And I it was very much into photographing like urban art also. There's a really beautiful book on by Obey on urban art. But this is... really interesting. If you look at some of these pictures here, there's a lot of cool stuff, a lot of cool, really interesting things. So I really want to start with this. This is a really interesting shot. There's a couple things I liked and a couple things I'd like to see different. So it's just, so I think it's amazing because it's such a upright building in a small space. It definitely falls into the urban decay. At one time, this place was amazing. And eventually, the urban part, decay part caught up with it, even with the tree. So it's just, but it's interesting. I had some thoughts about this. I think, first of all, there's a, I mean, you can have it in color, but if you wanted to put this in black and white, it would certainly be a really good candidate because it would just lend itself towards that kind of aged feeling. If you leave it in color again, it becomes more kind of contemporary. But for this shot, we'll talk about this area. I don't know if you could see my little, right here in the top, there's some area where there's a tree growing out the top. And also on the right, this appears to be a power cable. I'm not sure why. but there is a power cable. Those things are okay to eliminate. Anything that doesn't belong, please feel free. You can take that out. It's just, unless you're, unless not allowed to do that. But for your purposes, it would be good. The sidewalk is really interesting on the right, leading right through the frame. But you have the car here. Again, I kind of work maybe that if you can remove that car or shoot when that car is passed. I think it kind of lends itself to a feeling where it's a more contemporary car, do you see? And then perhaps, not a so contemporary car. But it's interesting. I like the architecture. The broken windows are certainly aged, and it's just definitely falls into that decay category. But that's a really interesting shot. This is really cool. So here you have these beautiful lush flowers that are so fantastic. They're blooming and they're so vibrant and they're so alive. And then you have this decaying old building. So you're really playing off the contrast here. Something really ancient that is in decay, and then you've got some vibrancy in life. So this is where the color works here, obviously, and it's just so it's interesting. I like that contrast. There's a lot of textures here in the grassy area. I would say I would take a linear gradient and bring it down from the top. When you're in an Adobe Camera Raw, just beginning to work on this image, tone down the brightness that is on the top part of the frame. And again, I can't really speak about like there's some on the right-hand side of the frame, maybe just because the image was smaller or, how it was saved, there's some degradation of the actual image, but you could work with that. You just try to work, shooting in RAW, working with the most information that you can to start with, and then work from there. But it's just right on the top part of the frame. I think the shadows underneath the structure, there's enough definition there. But it's when you look at this thing, oh, there's flowers, and then you're like, wow, this is really old. So it's kind of, I like the way that the photographer played off that technique. Very well done. So we have, this one, I think it's called Prison Windows. So this is an interesting one that would kind of almost work with symmetry, because part of it is so very symmetrical, but then you interrupt that pattern and then you change it, and that's visually interesting. So when things get too symmetrical, it's really interesting to break the pattern, and that's what that vertical column does. And then you have that third set of windows, and yet that window has this beautiful ivy or something growing from it. Just for me, I would take out the small ropey area on the top. It just it takes away from really an interesting shot. You've got a lot of texture. You've got peeling painted wall, and old, and the windows are broken. Again, I think this was perhaps a prison or something at some point. But interesting to photograph as far as urban decay. It really fits in that category. There's a lot of peeling paint, and it looks like the photographer handled the working with the image itself. Maybe probably on a very overcast day when everything is evenly lit, which is helpful. Sometimes you're out shooting and you have this real dramatic shadow that falls into that, and it's super hard to be able to express your point of view when you have half light and half dark. So bright overcast days sometimes work super nice. So I do like this. I think it was a very expressive shot. Ooh, we have, let's see here. I'll make sure we have time for we've got some beautiful shots. So this old farmhouse, this is so interesting to me. I know some of the photographers here are working in infrared. That's like the first thing I thought, wow, wouldn't that be cool? An infrared shot. The thing about infrared, it adds contrast where there's none. So I actually wrote a book on infrared years ago, and it was interesting. I was just obsessed about shooting. So you really think about things different brilliantly compositionally. So I like what happened with the trees. The background, the little light on the top of the house, it's kind of hard to get that. Also, I think that was probably taken maybe late in the day. So you have this brightness on the left-hand side that is coming in, maybe softening the edge of that tree. Again, you can tone that down. I would tone down the brightness right there. So there's a lot of textures, a lot of interest. Certainly at one time, a fabulous house, and to experience it go through its life cycle. It's really quite interesting. And because the trees are so vibrant and robust, yeah, the house has seen better days, and certainly beyond working with. But I think it's really interesting. Again, you could process it in, you could even try an artificial infrared, see if you could brighten up the leaves. That might be kind of fun. So experiment. I think that's one of the most fun things about photography is experimentation. I mean, you go in thinking one thing, but be open to ideas B and C and just see what happens and especially during composition, but also in post-processing. And that's, we're shooting mostly digital now pretty much. So you have that option of just saying, okay, well, write it down, just make a list of the things that will be fun to do next time.
That's great. I like that. I like that term life cycle, right? You see it, especially in this category, again, you had the juxtaposition of the beautiful flowers and plants and that big machine that was going through its life cycle.
Yes.
But here, yeah, you've got a great one. And actually, I came away, you just gave me a great idea. I think I'm going to call the folks at Skylum and say they need to add a inject infrared tool in there in Luminar Neo. That'd be
Oh,
great
yes.
to convert
Yeah.
images to infrared, with a plugin.
You can do that. So one
Oh,
time I sat down and looked at the different images and that I had in black and white. I thought, well,
yeah.
what would happen? If there's a couple, things that you can do to really change the outcome. So it's an artificial, but it's not exactly infrared, but it's kind of fun just to see what it would be like if you had shot that.
You seem like a real post-processing innovator, like an experimenter. I love that.
I think it's fun. It's so funny because people ask you, do you enjoy capture or obviously most people want to be out shooting. But I think there's a point in time when it's so nice to go back and review things. I do a lot of video. So, and what I find, there's a moment in time that you can extract from this. Maybe it was 6 seconds or 4 seconds, and then you slow it down, and then you see things differently. So I think that's where I sort of got really kind of fell more back in love with, like, not so it was post-processing, but revisiting an image and see what different possibilities that there are for it. So we have, oh gosh, so a lot of different images. Oh, I guess I should hurry. So here, this one is really fun. It reminds me of the Badlands. I shot some really interesting cars out there. I like this car. It has so much personality. I think you could almost get into this car a little bit deeper, if you had a different lens, and there's so much texture and detail on like the hood part or the peeling paint. This it's also beautiful. Compositionally, I would like to see less of the right side because I feel like it's just leaning into the left side just a bit, and you have this space on the right. So it just has a little balance issue. You could attempt to solve this by cropping a little bit tighter over the two and then bring this down and then sort of recompose. And I think that would make it a stronger. It appears that the photographer had some brushiness that they had to try to avoid. And certainly when you're out shooting, urban stuff, you're limited to, things like this and no trespassing signs. And so you can kind of have to get what you could. But this car is a good one. I mean, you could get into this really with a different lens and dig in and see the potential, but it's a very good shot.
Are you saying you've walked around a few no trespassing signs in your time?
Not exactly. No. But if you shoot in a window or someplace where you can, you can't. It's there's some abandoned places, and then there's some in San Francisco. So around the Presidio, or I'm talking about, that was a building had shot a lot. There's some really interesting urban art in there.
Oh, wow.
Um, let's see. So this one I looked at. So I had a lot of thoughts on this. I like that, again, there's no harsh shadows that are obscuring this. There's some little things on the foreground. I would just limit as a pen or a branch or something. Feel free to take those out. Anything that's going to interrupt the viewer's entrance into a photo and they're looking at something on the ground, or something that was left there, a bottle or something, just take it away. And this allows you to kind of get into this particular image. It's taken, it looks very, very old. Anytime you see layers and layers of plaster coming off, revealing these old bricks below, it's been up there for a while. And at some point in time, they felt the need to put the iron gate on there for protection. So it's interesting, it looks like it's almost been walled in from the inside. So it's a curious photo. I mean, as far as exploration, again, that yellow object on the bottom, take it out, feel free. There's a tool called remove in when you're in Photoshop, and you can just, if you don't want to use remove, there's content away. There's all different tools that will allow you to remove certain things. And think about it, you really want the image to be presentable to the viewer and not distracting. You want them just to feel what you were feeling as you took this photograph. And that's, to me, is very important.
Yeah, that's a cool shot. I was in Mazatlan a couple of months ago, and I'm now kicking myself for not having taken more of those kind of shots for the category.
Yeah, it's really hard. So when I travel, I always have like a list, like a scout list, and most of it involves like time of day and, seeing what is it. But then there's things that you don't think about. It's like, wow, there's some urban art or some old buildings or something, those are fun things to explore.
Street shooting.
Do we have time?
Why don't we move on to
Okay.
the water category? I have a feeling that you like water.
Okay, so water is,
A couple
that's,
more to your, there you go.
okay, super. Thank you for the navigational
No
pointers.
problem. No problem.
So water, okay, yeah,
Wow.
this is fun. I mean, if you're looking at my screen, then you're looking at some fabulous shots, really interesting. Water, of course, growing up in Florida, is near and dear to my heart. There's so many possibilities. It's water, but it's not just water. It's reflections, it's motion of the water. Some really cool person did some infrared here. And then we have water in motion. So I think that's one of the things to think about as you're going out shooting. Make sure you have the tools. Have a neutral density filter. That's going to help you slow down. We'll talk about this. One of the photographers, really 15-second exposure. Those things don't just happen. You plan for that. So bring all of this into it. Love this. So it's very dramatic, very black, very white. It's super contrasty. But the essence of the shot is this waterfall is quite beautiful, and the way that it falls. I personally would think about the contrast is very high and it's beautiful, but I think that it starts to lose some of the definition when it is so bright. So you might need to either use a little bit faster shutter speed so there's more definition, or not so much contrast and processing. It's difficult to really see exactly what happened here, but the intent of the photographer is solid. So I like the way that these trees were here. You've got this drama, black and white. It's really quite beautiful. The expression of the cloud, of the water coming down here, is really quite nice. But again, some of the detail is lost, so we can't quite see it. And whether that is in capture or in post-processing, I can't tell. But think about that. If you can revisit the shot, tone down the brightness, maybe that happened there. It's really easy to lose control in the field as you're shooting, because you have this vision of what the exposure is going to be like and your intent. So sometimes you might have to make a couple of shots. It's really hard to tell in the back of the camera that you've lost to look at the highlights and just double check that you've caught that covered. So beautiful shot. I really like the photographer's intent here. Oh, same thing for this one. This is really fun. So here, this is beautiful. So they just focus right in on the falls, and it's a really, really beautiful to find this in real life. And this is what we seek because it's so peaceful and you get drawn into the composition. And this is why we shoot. I mean, we want to tune out the outside world. We want to focus on these beautiful, beautiful shots. So I would do, there was a couple things. Technically, I think that they're right pretty much pretty good on the on how the brightness and the darkness, just a little bit is lost in some of the detail. I think the focus is the main thing. So I don't know if this was made larger and that just, they made the picture bigger, maybe they lost focus from this, or if it's just a definition. When you're shooting, find that one place, because if you're using like auto, it's just like in the sky, it's going to jump around and try to seek its own focus. You might need to go to a pinpoint focus, pick a rock and have enough depth of field so you have all this. There's a lot of interesting texture here, and you want to make sure that you capture it all. So I like the shot conceptually. I think it's really nice. Just the sharpness. Again, you can address a lot of the sharpness now in post too, but getting it in capture is always super cool. Beautiful shot. Well done. Oh my goodness, there's so many nice shots. I would have trouble getting through this category. So here we are. This is, I love fall because I live in Florida. We don't have fall. We just have hot and hotter. So there's not much there. So I always go out west, and this is people go in the Northeast. This is stunning. It's absolutely beautiful. What attracted me to this photograph is the winding patterns of the water. Just absolutely gorgeous. This is what you really want to try to come back with. You've got a keepsake memory that pulls you back and takes you to this exact moment in time, and that's a really beautiful thing. You've got this little splash of yellow leaves on the top right, some orange leaves in the back. Really quite pretty. Smoky Mountains, I just realized this is where this is. That's a beautiful place to go. So I love what the photographer did, getting it down fairly low. You can see the detail in the foreground on the small leaves are in the foreground. That's important. I think sometimes it's easy just to focus into the scene, but you really have to think about your depth of field when you're doing this, how long you want that shutter speed to be. So you got control over that. When you begin to lose control, certainly you can grab a neutral density filter to try to help control the shutter speed, slow that down. I love the textures, and the rock formations are beautiful. Makes me want to be there. So there's a lot of really nice qualities. You might sharpen just some of the water areas in that foreground, and to see if you can get a little more definition there. But again, that's really small. It's a beautiful shot.
I like how the leaves on the foreground rock,
Yeah.
kind of mimic the ones above, and you can kind of feel like there's a tension or a connection between them.
Yeah, it's an echo in color, and it
Oh,
reinforces. Yeah, it's really quite beautiful. I like that. Anytime you have that, and again, it has that, I would say, diagonal flow. And I'm quoting Tony Sweet because I adore him and I think he's wonderful. But he would tell you this, it's got that nice diagonal flow and rhythm to the photograph, and it's really beautiful.
well, Mr. Sweet knows a little bit about rhythm, doesn't he?
Yes, he does. I've known Tony for so many years, and so we don't catch up at shows so much anymore. But when I do see him, it's so great, so great. Talk about the swirl. Again, this is one, this is really well thought out, conceptually for a photographer. They see the water, they see the rocks, there's a waterfall back there, but that's not what grabs the eye. So what he's seeing, he noticed emotion, or she noticed emotion in this. There's Gary, sorry. So yeah, you have this where it's really interesting. So, and then they thought about what happens if I change the shutter speed. So instead of it's so natural. Most of us take, we stand up, we take the cameras at our eye level, and we're shooting at eye level. put the camera on the ground, spend some time working with shutter speed. So here is worked into the 15-second zone. So really, that's a beautiful thing. So capturing this swirl that happened over 15 seconds, that's beautiful. That's really interesting. We have a lot of texture on the rocks on the bottom part of the frame. You can see through the water, yet this whirlpool of rhythm and pattern just pulls you in right in the front. And then it sort of guides you through, and you can see that there's a waterfall in the background, and there's also fall color around there. So yeah, it was a really fun photograph. I know it must have been fun to take and rewarding to come away with, but yeah, that's a great idea. So when we all go to our fall places, so we'll start shooting on the ground and also 15 seconds. That's a beautiful shot. Very well done. So we have, oh, so yeah. So I just want to let's just talk about this one. This is an infrared shot. So when your cameras are old and you're going to lay them to rest, you send them in and have them reincarnated as infrared cameras. So I use SlickPic. It's a company that will take your older camera, and I can't tell you how many. I probably have like 5 or 6 cameras that are infrared that were, their use has gone. You just step up to a new camera, and then you have this older camera. But I bring mine, especially out west. This is exactly why, because you want to capture the photograph in a different way. You want to tell a different story. It's surreal. It's beautiful. It's a new way to tell your story of a familiar subject. So you really are creating a totally different composition. So you see what happens. We were talking about that image earlier, what happens to the foliage. This is what happens to the foliage, is bright white. So the person was probably using, I can't say, but either an R72 filter on the camera, or they actually had an R72, which is a standard conversion for an infrared camera. It's really beautiful. I remember the first time I put an infrared filter on the lens of my camera, and I was like, oh, this is so beautiful. And I was hooked, and I think that's good. First thing for infrared, it's very prone to noise. So we got to make sure we hit that noise reduction first. There's a little bit that evident in the top left corner, easy fix. So work with that. I might compose so the tree wasn't quite, I don't think the tree is necessary for this. If you could have moved over a little bit to the left again, it's always hard to say after the pass, but it's beautiful. The contrast on the vegetation is perfect. It's really nice. And you'll notice that the water is black, and that's because the sky often is very dark and infrared. It just simply is reflecting down into the water. That's what makes all this interesting contrast. So yeah, I like talking about this. Is a really cool shot. But again, you maybe avoid that tree area, because the trees in the background are really beautiful, and the opportunity to capture that reflection is super nice. Oh my goodness. We have so many beautiful shots.
We didn't say it would be easy, Deb. We just said it would be fun.
No, it is fun because it takes me away. There's I get to visit all these beautiful places through the minds of other photographers. So this is really cool. This is a beautiful shot. A Jordan Pond. I think this is a Maine. It's the same Jordan Pond. There's a lot of stones and rocks, and the water's really clear. I actually put a waterproof housing on mine and just dipped it, and the water's crystal clear. It's so pretty. So I love this. I like the rocks, and it leads you into seeing, if I'm wrong, I'm sorry, but it's called the bubbles back there. But I like the clouds. One little, maybe tone down the brightness of this. I think here it is really easy to get color casts in images. So this is the first thing you check for. Sometimes you shoot and the camera really interprets color a little bit differently than what you had in mind. And that certainly happens a lot, with different. So make sure that the color is super neutral. You can actually click on a gray area and sort of neutralize the color. I think it just has a slight green blue cast. And I think it's a really easy fix to have. And also maybe just the contrast. You sort of it looks like it might be a wee bit contrasty. It could have been the time of day, but regardless, you can open up the shadows in that and have a lot of that definition. Again, this is one of those take me away places that's really quite beautiful. Oh my goodness, we have so many. So this is the photographer says this is Yellow Branch Falls. I haven't been here. This is really pretty. So this would be the kind of thing I would be very attracted to as compositionally. It's not just one fall. Look how many falls there are. It's really quite attractive. Well done on the shutter speed, so that we've got a shutter speed that works where you still have definition in the falling water, and it's not so long that it obliterates the definition. You've got a little bit of the definition here, which is really nice. Some pops of green. It's very lush, so it's a very alive type of thing. I like the way the photographer filled the frame, so you're only seeing all of the waterfalls, and it is so refreshing. It's really quite beautiful. I couldn't really nitpick this. I mean, again, if I'm looking at critically, if this were my shot, not too much. You could try to open up some of the little shadows here, but I don't think it's entirely relevant in the middle part or the dark. Again, it's just the time of day, but it's a beautiful shot. I think it's sharpened correctly. The noise reduction has been addressed, and there's not those two issues don't exist in this. So I think it's really well done. So in that case, keep doing what you're doing. Let's see. Oh, okay. I know I get so excited. There's so many. Okay. So this one I love. So being in Florida, I noticed that the photographer took this in North Florida, near dear to my heart. We had so many hurricanes last year. We actually lost a lot of the piers, and it's been difficult. So there's a lot been reconstruction and things like that. So it's been rough, but I do like to photograph just the waves. And if you don't fall in love with this wave, it's so beautiful. So what the photographer did was to capture this in motion and used a shutter speed so that you have this little splash on the top. It's not frozen. So you think, especially with waves. So I like to photograph waves, incoming waves, maybe a 15th of a second, outgoing waves, maybe a second or 2 to 3 seconds. There's a lot of different patterns, but here you have this big swoop. It's translucent and the playful action of the waves on top. So I love the way they captured that. The sky is just a complement to that. I personally might tone down that center cloud because it was just a little bright there, but I love this action. So I think this is something that if you are shooting waves, try this. It doesn't have to be frozen, it doesn't have to be at 2,000th of a second, to collect this action. This becomes more expressive and a lot of passion in this shot. It's really, really well done.
That's a great comment on that. I've always struggled getting the translucent wave.
Yes.
I was at my local photo club last night, and the winning shot for the quarterly contest, which was waves, was a shot where the artist captured the translucency. Now this one had a surfer flying off of it.
Oh,
Sprays of water every place, but she nailed the translucency out
yeah.
of wind and sea.
Yeah, that's hard. I think that, again, it's time of day. So really, this kind of looks like it might have been later in the day, but not too late, because then you start getting shadows that creep in around 4 or 5 o'clock, but enough where, you have some light. Yes, it's really quite beautiful.
And you're right. I see a lot of photographers with those 2,000th of a second shutter speeds, and I think it's great. I love, frozen water drops in the air, but
Yeah.
you've really opened my eyes up to the possibility of having this kind of almost ethereal feel to the
Yes.
water flows off of there. That's cool.
Oh, there's so many ways to play with water. And I looked through this, and as I was looking, there's just, blown away. Like this photographer, wow, how cool is this? They took this and utilized their time frame. So, I browsed through this and I saw this and I thought, first of all, such an effective use. I think it's during a time where we couldn't get out. We had more restrictions, during COVID. And so instead of just like passing that time off, we honed in, learned a new craft. Beautiful. I mean, that's what you do. You just take whatever's given you and you roll with it. This person digs in and explores the world of these macro splash actions. So you have the wave, this droplet coming down, it hitting this water and exploding into this incredible mushroom color. I really like that. I think, first of all, compositionally, starting with a yellow background, you use green. I mean, those are really nice color combinations. It must take extreme patience. But I photograph a lot of wildlife. It does take extreme, but I think this might be top that. I love what happened. So you're getting 1, 2, 3. You're getting this consecutive action. It's really interesting. So you begin to see the water droplets spin off, and then this explosion that really happens here. So well done. I can terrific use of time, as far as learning a new craft and exploring something that's fun. I think that, again, exploration is so beautiful in photography. It's not just one thing. There's so many different tangents that you can go off on. Let's see. Oh, we have so many. So beautiful. Are we okay on time? I don't know if we hit.
Oh no, you're fine.
I don't want to mess up anybody's paradigm. So, oh my goodness. So we have some interesting shots. See, we have the wave shot. Oh, this was fun. So I like this. So it looks to me like the photographer got this. It was raining. It must have been stuck inside their hotel room, perhaps. And then, we have this sun. So to be able to shoot through this, it had this really dark, just obliterated the interior, focusing in on past, you've got the water droplet. So the buildings behind that are out of focus. There's a lot of elements that make that a challenge. So you're setting up the camera, really focusing on that first layer where the water drops are. It's really cool. I don't know where this is. It looks like it could be Miami or something, but the sky is starting to pop out blue again. So I like it. It's almost like an abstract. So they're working with that. And I think it was creative to think about this type of water for this category. It's very different. You have a lot of type of the same similar type of images. So this is different. And I like it because it is different. So they did a good job. Everything looks pretty in focus and sharp. So I think it was a creative entry for the category. Wow. So this is a dramatic shot. So for this shot, this is sort of a moment in time, more of a candid type of photograph. They had a beautiful expanse of clouds, and they have a woman who's posing. Perhaps she's related to the person on the right. It's hard to say. First thing, when you are reviewing your images, always check the horizon line. So it does make a difference. So we don't want to fall into the ocean here. We just, go in. It's really easy to do. There's a tool that will allow you to straighten your images in a snap. You basically just draw a line across, and it happens. So because I'm shooting a lot of seascapes. I love seascapes, and my tripod's in the sand, so it will dig down. Even though I had everything perfect, it's going to change, and it's just, you roll with it. But do make sure, if you can always employ the grid as you're shooting. There is a grid usually in cameras that will help you define that. I like the really cinematic crop on this, because you get this big expanse of clouds. So, and I do that. So when I'm shooting seascapes, I always like to use a 14 to 24 millimeter. 14, you want that stretch of clouds, so you want to be able to work with that. So I will do that, and of course this crop emphasizes that quite well. The areas, some of the rocks are just a little dark. You might want to open up the shadows in that also, and explore some of those tools. Some of those, we have so many automated tools in Adobe Camera Raw that will match your camera profile and just sort of correct anything, because sometimes it will interpret the brightest part of the image and make decisions based off of that. So that's a thought. This is interesting. So really dramatic, moody shot of this with not only water, but we've got mountains, it looks like, and dramatic. So when you're shooting like this, it's always interesting to get layers and layers and layers of information. So you have the foreground, you have the water layer, you have the mountainous background, you've got the sun, and then you've got the clouds. So visually, you're taken through this shot, and it's really quite interesting. So I might just brighten up that one little cloud, because again, just like the brightest part gets a lot of attention, the darkest part can also pull your eye. And I think there's so much to explore visually in this image. And you can just, in this case, it would be simple enough just to take a linear gradient and you just drag that down to where you need it and just slightly bump the exposure. You could bump the exposure, you could bump the shadows, and just see how that works for you. I think that would help it from being so heavy. So, you've got, because there's a lot of beautiful golden light and you really want to kind of emphasize that. And so, certainly it looks like a interesting boat ride out in this area. Any tiny little detail things, I would just spot out, the little white dots here and there, and eliminate those. But interesting shot, certainly to tell a landscape story. So, there's so many. I'll take a look at this one. So water breaking on the rocks. Yeah, so here's where you really want to employ the use of a fast shutter speed anytime you have this rushing action. So this is where I would use probably 2,000ths of a second to begin to capture this. I think that photographer was in that range. So they're capturing this really cool action. And it's compared to that slow, beautiful flowing like wave shot that we see earlier. This is a totally different feel. So here's where you want to increase your ISO, to increase your shutter speed, to freeze the action of the waves. That's really important. So the photographer did that here. I would open up the shadows in the rocks just to add a little bit more definition. I think the rocks are just a bit too heavy, has beautiful texture, but it's almost black in certain areas. So you could open up those particular shadows. Yeah, because it's a really fun shot. It's definitely, there's a place in Florida called Blowing Rocks. If you ever go down to South Florida, this is what happens when the tide is right. Sometimes in the summer, the tide is really slack, but when you have active, spicy tides, that's when you get this. Yeah, that was a long time.
We have a seawall that comes at La Jolla in California here, and it goes out into the ocean there a little bit to protect a cove. The sea lions have their pups on this beach.
Oh,
and it used to be a place for children, so they built the seawall. And yeah, when we have spicy waves, going and getting these kind of shots as the waves crash over the seawall is really fun. I got to seek those out.
Yes, absolutely. Again, that's where paying attention to the weather. I know specifically, I learned of a storm that was coming in South Florida. It's about 2.75 hours, south of me. But I knew the storm was coming the week, and I planned to be there. And again, you bring your rain to cover your camera, make sure it doesn't get splashed like this situation. You don't want to get your camera splash, and bring the microfiber cloth so in case your lens gets wet, and you can wipe that off. So in situations like that, whatever you need to bring. So very well done. Let's see. We'll take a look at this one. Surfer shot. So wow. So it was a surfer shot, but really, it's about the clouds. Those clouds are so fabulous. I think I did something similar in Naples, and I took a picture of this. There was a sailboat in the picture, but it was the sky. It was absolutely beautiful. Anytime you want to take as many different photos as you can in many different compositions to be able to bring this. It is such a beautiful story, to have nature express itself this way and the conditions be so dramatic. So I would say you make a little list of things that you want to do. Have a still shot, do a time lapse, shoot a video, do, you know, just multiple, you just like anything that you can think of to take advantage of a great subject would definitely be the works here. So we've got the surfer coming in on the waves. I can't really tell too much about the foreground area, what was down here, but it looks, yeah, like it might have been a challenge. The waves are pretty mild at that point, but the surfer is going for it.
Yeah. I was going to say it felt like he's a little crowded on the bottom, but again,
Yes.
um, you know, whether generative fill would have helped or just moving the camera down, maybe the artist cropped it this way to in order to maximize the sky. But yeah, interesting shot. Yeah, that's a tough wave to surf. He's pretty much done with his ride at that point.
Not a lot of big waves, but yes, I again, you know, you think about there's layers and layers of that you can work with, and again, think about how it's balanced, you know, as you compose. So you can do this, shoot this way, but I think that, yeah, the clouds just really take center stage here. So wouldn't even hurt to have not the surfer, you know, so beautiful. Be careful how, like in the center, there's a little area on the right side, not quite sure if how, I think it's just a processing issue, or it's a little purpley in that area. So if you go back again, you know, this is where when it leads into doing all the things, you make sure that like noise is addressed first and then work on the correction part. You know, if something needs to be brought up or toned down, you can do that. But this is really a fine shot of a very expressive image.
Very, very cool. Why don't we slip over into Symmetry
Oh,
and
okay.
week 26?
Okay.
Get your thoughts on that.
All right. So we'll give
Oh
you.
wow, I love this category. So just a quick note:
Mhm,
we had a photographer named Rick Holbert
mhm.
do an entire talk on symmetry. Unfortunately, his talk landed just after we did week 22 symmetry. So we
Oh,
decided to open up Symmetry 2 so that anybody who attended his talk could use some of the lessons. So these are post Rick Holbert's symmetry educational session. So let's see how he did.
yes. So this is good stuff. You know, and there's so much really to learn from symmetry. Symmetry is one of those things where you gravitate. It's something that pulls you in, and that's very simple. We'll just take this first one and take a look at. So here we have a staircase, nicely composed. So it is so easy to get a little off to the left or to the right, and then it changes. It just even an imperceptible amount will, you know, the mind knows. So, but I like this. He's got interesting kind of stairwell or escalator type thing. One figure sort of mysteriously coming in on the right. I think it really fulfills the symmetry. If you divide this image in, it's going to be a mirror image, you know, in and of itself. And that's really kind of what you like to think about. It's fun because you can actually do this in Photoshop, you know, mirror something if you have something. And I think some people have done this in this, but it's really an interesting way to do it because the mind likes pattern, but it also likes the pattern to be interrupted, which is a good example with this figure coming into the frame. So really beautiful. Good use of black and white. The textures are well done here. It's a little bright where she's standing, but that might be a light source or something. You might be able to tone that down, but beautiful work on that. Oh my goodness, there's so many beautiful, interesting shots. So this is fun. So really kind of dramatic. It looks to be a type of structure here, or maybe an artistic structure. I really can't quite tell. But the patterns of this reflecting the light are very dramatic, super interesting. I would have been one that I was drawn to. So you still have this pathway on the right and some figures coming in. Black and white was a really good choice because it takes again some of that reality out of it and brings in some of the whimsical look with these patterns and shapes. So it was really quite nice. So it was a lot of interesting symmetry that goes into a vanishing point. And that's where, your lens choice is super helpful. So if you're shooting with a 28 to 70 or something, it's harder, let's say, then you got to widen the lens to get really close to this, and you get that super, I love vanishing points. It's just easy to pull from that and then make an interesting shot, street scenes, just kind of go away. So I like this. Very interesting. Oh, so we have, oh, this is fun. To the sky. Look at this. So really pretty. It almost looks like it's mirrored. Of course, it is not. They're playing off the use of blue and gold. And I think that's really, really important. So anytime that you can put the complementary colors together, blue and gold is such a win. And so they really emphasized the gold part of this. And then they had the blue sky. And it's really, really interesting. So visually, getting up close, just pointing the camera. I personally love to do this in travel shots. I'll shoot with the widening the lens many times, or even a fisheye. Just get this really interesting vantage point. So I think this is what the photographer did here. Just got as close as possible and shot up lots of reflections in the window. So it was very well done. Just really cool. Just a little light on the little easy to tone down, just bring some of that back. The shadows here look like they're well handled. It's a very interesting shot.
That one might have been a good candidate for HDR as well.
Yes. So yeah. So then you could, well, if you look at that, yeah. So there's a lot of I used to do a lot of HDR. I haven't done so much, because the cameras handle dynamic range so different, now than. But I used to do a lot of that. But you can't. It just is a different type of result. So that could happen. So let's see. We have so many different images. Let's look at. So I looked at this one. Okay, there's a couple things. This was a really good start. I mean, you saw the direction that you wanted to take it. The thing about this one is at the top of the frame, we've lost a lot of the sky. And again, it's really hard to handle when you're outside. It can get out of control super easy. I would recommend, as you mentioned, HDR. Certainly, a lot of the cameras have exposure bracketing where you can do that. I just use I use a graduated neutral density filter. That's my friend. So often I will use that to tone down the brightness in the sky and balance the composition. So I carry a two-stop reverse graduated. It sounds really technical. Two-stop reverse grab. Okay, that will just right at the very bottom of the frame, that's where the density of a neutral density filter is. And then it fades towards the top. So that's because it's very, very bright at the center. So you could use that. That's really easy to work with. The other thing that I thought about, it's almost symmetrical, but you've got a little bit more room on that left side. Sometimes you really kind of have to move, take some steps, reevaluate your composition and see. But I think what happened is the brightness just got away from the photographer. And again, you can revisit that original composition, see if you can tone that down. Or if you have an opportunity to revisit a location, think about the tools that you might use, that exposure bracketing, or just using a graduated neutral density filter, because the brightness really gets a little out of touch here in the mid part. But I love the birds. That's so sweet. Anytime you have it just makes it so lively and pretty. And the green algae that's growing, just sort of gives it a little bit more life. But if it's symmetrical, I would make sure it's symmetrical, and you can go into Photoshop and maybe sort of recompose. You can sort of, there's distort, and there's all kinds of things that will help you make your image. If you were just a little off, or you couldn't get exactly where you wanted to stand, you can revisit that and work with those tools. Oh, this is awesome. Look at this. I love what the photographer did here. So I think this is a F-22 Raptors. super dramatic. The photographer's choice of putting this in black and white is really nice. It's very symmetrical. I stood right front and center of this aircraft. Also has a very cinematic crop, which I think works well for this because it's just the plane. You've got this aircraft here and all the interesting detail. The clouds, I'm not really sure. It might have been I want to say it's a depth of field issue, but it looks like they were a little softer than they should be in comparison to the context of the sharpness of the plane. But it's really beautiful. It could have been, it's fast moving clouds. It's hard to say, but this is a fun shot. I like shooting planes. I know Moose Peterson is like the aircraft, he's so amazing. I used to do a lot of stuff. We had some old vintage aircraft and they were so interesting to shoot. The vintage aircraft were real fun. They would, take them apart. You could see all the engine and this is amazing. I really like this. So the front and center low, the angle was right. The symmetry is perfect. So well done on this.
Moose is the master and
yeah.
Fun guy. And I agree with you about shooting older planes because oftentimes, especially if they're really old, they've got the radial engines there and you've got tons of like texture and detail you can get in on those. And yeah, good genre, aviation photography.
Oh yeah, it's fun. I think it was called the Tico Bell, this old aircraft. And they removed the cowling, and you could see inside the engine. And I was like, oh, this is so amazing. I wanted to get super close. It's beautiful. Aircraft. I mean, Moose does a beautiful job. He's just such a tremendous photographer. Wow, we have all this. So symmetry being the main thing. So it's really about symmetry. So let's look at this memorial image here. So it's a little tricky because I think it was on a hill. So you've got this slight, the image looks straight, but you've got this background. But the images, you've got all of the crosses here to work with. So it is a good example of symmetry from the first, really going to the back of the frame and seeing all the beautiful crosses in this shot. So this is a photographer says this is a World War II cemetery in Italy. So yes, so symmetry really balances and works for this type of shot. So yeah, that's the main thing. So when you want to get a symmetrical image, getting front and center and then making sure that you can do this. Another way you could do this really, again, put the camera super low to the ground, and it just changes the dynamics of that. So it doesn't have to be the composition, but is an alternative composition. So, I always think about it's so easy for our eyes to go right at the top. But here, I think the intent of the photographer was to illustrate how many how many crosses there are, and I think that adds to the emotional part of the shot. Oh my goodness, there's so many beautiful symmetry type shots. Well, this is pretty cool. This is it says Sydney, so I'm not quite sure. It looks like a statue. I'm not quite sure where this is, but it's beautiful. As far as symmetry, so this nails it. You've got front and center. You have the figure. Nice treatment of black and white. Again, it takes away the reality. You have this really interesting type of shot through the doors on the side and the bricks. Really beautifully done. I would watch the noise. Again, it's hard for me to judge that, but if you look at the original and if you see anything, you might use a little bit noise reduction in low light environments. That's where you're first able to notice that. There's a lot of symmetry if you go up here to the top part of the frame where you have these spires, and then you can actually see outside. There's even into the symmetry again, just going outside the frame. So it's a really beautiful example of what this particular topic is and how to explore that, and having the repetition of shapes, the doors on the side, the architecture in the ceiling, and then just going beyond. So I would say this photographer nailed this particular shot as far as symmetry. Well done.
I like that the layers of symmetry even extending outside the windows, but
Yeah.
I have to give mad props to the guy who designed this room, right? Because they were thinking symmetry as well.
They were, and it's so interesting, architecturally to do this. So this must be like an upper level, and it's really beautiful. But to be able to capture that and bring that back, and have a memory of a location, but then to really fall into something that's so artistic, such as a symmetry category. It was very well. I mean, anybody could take a shot, but this person intentionally stood here and made a conscious decision to make sure they included all of that. And I think it's very well done. Let's check this. So fall reflections. Okay, so I understand that. So this is, you can do this. Again, this is a checking the weather, making sure it's going to be a calm day, and you get these beautiful, beautiful reflections. So when I go out west this fall, I'm definitely going to be looking for that opportunity. I'll be checking the weather, seeing when it's going to be calm, going at the time of day. So often it's super early in the morning when it's just so calm. You don't have any ripples. So what happens is this composition on top is reflected into the water, and it's just a mirror reflection. It's beautiful. I like reflections because they're a story within a story, and it's just, and again, repetition is, the mind likes that, and it's really quite beautiful. I mean, even in the trees. So you've got the trees that are similar over here, but a little different over here, but organically it just happened that they were the same type of trees. So it's very pretty, and it's very peaceful. And then I think that the idea of symmetry really leans into that. So very nicely done.
That's a cool shot. Yeah. And like you said, making sure that the water is very still enhances the shot even more.
Oh, exactly. So you can get a lot of ripples, and then it's really hard because it's not telling the same story. But I will tell you, I've been guilty of throwing a rock in the water to capture those ripples, because it's kind of cool. So
nice. After the still shot is
that's right.
That's fantastic. Hey, Deb, why don't we look at one more, and then we'll let you get on with your day.
Alrighty.
I love this category too.
Let's see, there's so many interesting shots here. This is so bright. Really, this is fun. So this is where you're not shooting like something on the ground. The camera was lifted to really incorporate these amazing spirals of activity. So you have this just sort of Asian influence with the bright red. Really cool. I'm not even sure what the function of the Chinese temple they're saying was really quite beautiful. It's in Vietnam, they say. Okay, so it's beautiful. Interesting that this happened. So the drama of this certainly was the light and having this. Yeah, the photographer probably had this. The lights are more prominent where in the dark is dark, which is fine. I think that works out nicely because you don't really want to focus on there is a light back there. So we kind of want to tone that down. But it was interesting. It's a fun shot, and it's always good to come back with it. You've got the shots that you wanted, but also get some fun shots. This is a nice memory. It's very beautiful. And colorful, and that I think that's what really drew the photographer into the shot. It's really quite nice. Yeah, I love these. I went into San Francisco. There's a couple of little places in Chinatown. It was just so stunning, to be able to photograph the architecture and the color, and it just is so vibrant.
Those are great. Now, would you say that is, I'm a neophyte here. Is that symmetry?
So as far as symmetry, I think they were looking at these three. I would say it's almost symmetry. If you were to say did it fall? I would, yeah, I don't think that the actual figures of this, the conical figures were actually symmetrical. I think it was as symmetrical with the first four as possible. Um, and again, but it's not a, you've got the
I love the shot.
yeah, I love the shot. It was tough, really, to merge it in that symmetrical, because what we saw previously were certainly much more symmetrical shots. But I think this was more of a fun shot. I mean, it's some of the areas here aren't going to fall into that, but there's a lot of symmetry that lives in this shot if you look at all the detail.
Right.
And,
Absolutely. Oh yeah. I mean the way the wires of the coil.
yeah.
Look, yeah, definitely. Well, good stuff. Well, Deb, I want to thank you so much for your time. Sam and I have just thoroughly enjoyed this, and I know our audience has as well. I've been furiously taking notes on the side.
Oh, good.
Watch for color contrast. Tony Sweet said echoes and colors. I'm
Oh,
taking
yes.
notes over
Yeah.
here. So always learning, but again, thank you so much for your time, and folks, appreciate you joining us and hearing some of the insights Deb had to share. We will wrap up this video and put it on the SlickPic YouTube channel, and you'll see it in a future newsletter with a link over there to the YouTube channel. But yeah, really enjoyed your thoughts and insights into these, Deb.
Oh, thank you. I enjoyed seeing everybody's hard work and dedication and just the thought process of what they went through. So fabulous work to the SlickPic people. Amazing. Super good.
Thank you, Beth.
Hey, take care, everyone, and you have a great rest of your day as well, Deb.
Thank you. You too.
Appreciate you.